Should you avoid buying new construction? Should you avoid buying pre-sale from a developer? After watching this video, you might consider doing so. We've seen thousands of new home buyers go after new construction in the province of British Columbia and the Lower Mainland directly to the developer, excited about what they're going to get or what they think they're going to get. But this is where we see developers take advantage of excited would-be home buyers. So in today's video, I want to share with you some real-world stories and some real-life examples of some of the horrors that we have seen when people work directly with developers and go after pre-sale or new construction properties. These developers absolutely stick it to members of the public, and part of it is because of the loose BC rules and legislations towards new development. If that all sounds good, let's get into it. Hey, it's Darren here. If you're thinking of moving to Surrey, White Rock, or any of the surrounding suburbs, subscribe below so you can be the first to learn about the market and the areas. And like so many others, we've helped in the process of buying or selling a home. If you need help in the process, whether it's today or 6 months from now, use the link in the description to book a time to speak with me. We'll help you make sure that your move is the absolute best that it could ever be. If you follow the news and BC real estate and really how it operates, you will know that it has been under fire for years. We've introduced things like rescission periods for home buyers, new disclosures, tax disincentives to people looking to invest in real estate and to disincentivize certain activities, and so much more. Hot real estate markets make for incredibly frenzied buyers, and the government has been working really hard to slow this down. But the problem is they have focused largely on the resale market and have not turned their eyes to new development, new construction, pre-construction marketing. A world that is completely governed by a different set of legislation called the Real Estate Development and Marketing Act, or REDMA. In many ways, it works completely differently than to buying resale property. And the problem is the members of the public still need much better protection against the developers. An interesting fact you might find is that sellers of new construction don't necessarily have to be licensed under the laws of real estate like a realtor is in the province of British Columbia. A licensed builder must be licensed with the province. However, they are not necessarily privy to the same set of rules that a realtor might be when they're doing a resale transaction. This means they're not held to the same standard, and due to having massive budgets, including massive budgets to advertise and get your attention to come in the door, they can act more similarly to a for sale by owner or a private seller than they do to a real estate professional. This also means that they can employ teams of unlicensed sales professionals whose primary interest is to support the developer or the seller of the project. With this big budget, they can also hire teams of lawyers who will write and draft thick, multiple-page contracts that completely support the interests of the developer, removing a lot of rights and a lot of goodwill that should be going towards that home buyer. Now, whether the developer's team is licensed to sell real estate or not, the absolute crazy thing about this whole process is that a buyer can go directly into the sales center and work directly with the team that is there to represent the best interests of the developer. They come in and they sign dozens and dozens of pages of contractual documents. These buyers miss incredibly important terms, and oftentimes they don't plan for the long term and consider everything that they need to know about the process. This has become a big problem to the point where in this video here, I went as far as to say that I stopped recommending anybody buy new construction in the province of British Columbia for various reasons. So if you want to check that out, you can find that video in the description below. There's so many reasons which you can find in that video why I stopped recommending new construction, but even at times there's developers that will incentivize a buyer to come in without the help of either a real estate professional or their own lawyer, meaning they have zero representation or anyone that is trained and skilled in going through these documents and the process of buying a home. They don't have anybody like that on their team. So I wanted to make this video to let you know all about the top ways that I see developers absolutely stick it to home buyers. So hopefully if you ever decide to go after a pre-construction property or a new development property, it doesn't happen to you. So let's get started. So first they need to capture your attention, and you're going to see advertising as you're driving down the street for this new development that says things like prices starting in the 800s. What does that even mean? There is no firm price being advertised. So starting in the 800s could mean $889,000. They need you to come in the door so they can get your information, and you won't find any prices advertised anywhere on their website because they don't want that to be public information. You might be lucky enough to find a new development unit listed on a website like realtor.ca as an example, but more often than not, it is the absolute cheapest freeway facing, smallest, awkward layout, no window unit that you would ever find. They need to get that phone to ring and they need to get you in the door so they can sell you something else. Next, they use a sales technique called anchoring to help you be more agreeable to the prices that they're advertising when you get those numbers. They're going to present you with a range of options from different floor levels, different sizes of units, with, of course, different prices. Now, since the sale prices of what other people have paid for these units are not advertised anywhere, this means by using the anchoring technique, you're likely going to approach a unit that looks in the middle. It's not the cheapest, it's not the most expensive, and they've anchored you to these prices, making you become much more comfortable with them. There's no transparency in what other people have paid for units at this point, so without having that information, these numbers look really attractive. Making things worse, what if I told you someone just bought the neighboring unit in the same development that you were interested in, but they negotiated a way better deal? Well, how do they do that, do you ask? They do it through incentives. Incentives as massive as this one. But before I show you what this was, I want to tell you about some of the other incentives that they offer. When the market becomes more difficult, obviously it makes it more difficult for the developers to sell the units that they have for sale. Different deals end up being cut with absolutely everyone, and in efforts to keep that information private, so you're never talking with the neighbor and find out that you actually literally paid less than they did, which would result in a resentful customer, they hide these incentives and offer them out to different people. Just like they do all the time towards the real estate community, like in this text here, where we are seeing some of the back-end incentives being offered out, not publicly advertised. You've got air conditioning allowances, decorating credits, closing credits, where they offer you money to help pay your closing costs. They sometimes will offer you extra parking or free parking or more parking stalls or more storage lockers. The list goes on and on and on. In fact, one time when representing a client who was buying into new construction, we were able to negotiate the full home of furniture as part of the deal and ended up getting it for the same price as what the neighbor had just paid, no furniture included. These credits and incentives can get absolutely crazy, like this one did for a client that we helped negotiate, where we achieved a credit of $56,000 off. This is $56,000 less that they will have to pay at the time of closing than the neighbor did, all because of how it was negotiated. Something that that neighbor will never even know that took place. So at this point, I gotta ask, are you still interested in new construction? We're just scraping the surface on this, but let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, I'm gonna keep going.
Just a quick interruption to let you know that we're on a mission to empower home buyers and sellers to achieve unparalleled success in real estate. This video that you're enjoying right now is a labor of love, free from ads by choice, to help you nail your next move to our community and learn all about the crazy world of real estate from a real person who cares. Now, this takes hours and hours each week to get right, and it's just for you. So here's my humble request. A simple like from you on this video. That's all I'm asking. No need to hit subscribe. Just a click, taking mere seconds, could make a monumental difference to me, but more crucially, it could transform the journey for someone else who needs to hear this video's message. So thanks in advance for that like, and I hope you find the rest of this video to be just as valuable.
So with a complete lack of understanding about how this process works, optimistic buyers sign this paperwork with the developer or their sales team and lock themselves into a contract that is completely stacked in favor of the developer. There is so much fine print in these thick documents that you would never catch because you don't do this all the time. These documents were written by teams of legal professionals in the benefit of the developer, not you. So it's absolutely crazy for you to go into one of these developments without representation from either a lawyer or a realtor. But let's talk about some of the things that they sneak into these contracts now that burn a lot of people. To start, many multifamily developments like condominiums or townhome projects are many years out from being completed when they are advertised for sale and allow people to get into contracts with them. And as you likely can imagine, lots can happen in 3 or 4 years. There can be significant family dynamic changes. There can be job loss. There can be job promotion. There can be job relocations. But what about significant changes in not only the market, but in mortgage rates? Very similar to like what happened in 2022, when in the spring, the market absolutely peaked and then prices fell like a landslide, while in turn, mortgage rates went up to levels that we hadn't seen since 2007. Many people that bought in 2021, 2022 paid record high prices for these pre-sale developments, and they are no longer worth what they paid. This means that the bank is going to have a very tough time lending the money because these properties will not appraise for what they paid for them. And if they're lucky enough to have an appraiser say that that property is worth what they paid at the peak of the market, the mortgage rates are almost triple what they were back in 2022. Many of the people that bought these pre-construction homes can't even afford them. So the developers have sold you a promise in 3 or 4 years, you've locked in a price, and you do not have guaranteed financing for 3 to 4 years out. So you're just letting it roll and ready to see what happens. If that doesn't scare you enough, here are some more red flags that are snuck into the contracts that make things even worse. As an example, let's say someone did buy a pre-construction home, but 2 years into the 4-year process, they lose their employment and find themselves not able to complete on the property when it becomes time. Well, developers oftentimes will have assignment terms in their contracts stating what you can do or can't do if you've bought a home and need to try and resell it before it becomes time to complete on the property. This is what an assignment is. Many developers will charge an astronomical assignment fee, like 2.5% of either what you bought it for plus GST or what you want to assign it for to somebody else if there is some profit there, whichever number is greater. But that's only if they even allow for that. So those are massive numbers to begin with. But oftentimes when the market slows down, like it is in the current day market that we're experiencing right now, many developers will forbid you from being able to assign that property at all. You're gonna see terms exactly like this real term pulled out of a real pre-construction contract. The vendor may, at its option, charge the purchaser with an administration fee equal to 2.5% of the greater of the purchase price plus GST as applicable, or the assignment amount paid by the assignee to the purchaser plus GST as applicable for the assignment of the purchaser's interest in the strata lot or in this agreement as consideration for agreeing to the assignment and any associated legal and administrative costs. Without the vendor's prior consent, any assignment of this contract is prohibited. So without the developer's consent, you must complete on it. You cannot resell it. But what if you run into financing troubles? What if you can't come up with all the deposit money that you need to fulfill your contract? Because oftentimes you owe multiple deposits over a course of time to help finance the development. Well, you could lose all your money as proven in this real term that I found in a contract here. If the purchaser fails to complete the purchase of the strata lot or fails to pay any part of the deposit on the terms and conditions herein contained, then the deposit paid together with interest accrued thereon shall be paid by the vendor's solicitors to the vendor forthwith. Okay, so you could lose all your money. That's a problem. But what if you do plan to complete? What if all this works out? You're not planning on assigning it. You're not worried about losing your job, even though that could happen. Well, did you know it's common for developers to be able to do things like terminate your entire contract if they haven't sold out a certain portion of the development? As an example, after 18 months, if they haven't sold 75% of the units that they've put to market, they can flat out terminate your agreement and cause you to lose out on all the market equity gains that you may have made over those last 18 months. Did you know that it's common that they don't specify the types of appliances in the contract that you get, but rather just leave it flat, like you get a stove, you get a fridge. So you're really hoping that the developer's word and in good faith, they're going to provide you with the type of fridge and appliances that you saw in the sales center. Did you know that they can push the completion date of your project back unilaterally, oftentimes for anywhere up to about 2 to 3 years beyond what they estimate the completion date will be? As an example, from a real world contract where we have a client who is intending to complete in 2025, however, the developer can push it back up to 2027. Or what about no guarantee that your building or complex is even going to get something called a final occupancy permit, something that sounds very important but is not in fact enforced by the city of Surrey and can create problems when it comes to get financing on the property later on. There is nothing in these contracts that says the developer must deliver final occupancy to you as the buyer. So this is all before you even get into the home. This is just during the time that you're waiting. But eventually, hopefully, none of this becomes a problem and you do get into the home. Well, what are some of the concerns that you should have afterwards once you move in? Well, there's quite a few. Imagine you bought a beautiful new 800 square foot condo that, let's say you paid $800,000 for, a number not uncommon in the Lower Mainland. The day you go to do your deficiency walkthrough, you walk in and it's kind of feeling a little smaller than 800 square feet. Well, that's because it is about 8% smaller than what they had advertised to you and what you paid for. But wait a minute, you paid $800,000 for an 800 square foot condo. Well, surely that is a massive problem, but that's not the case if you didn't read the fine print in your contract. Fine print that looks exactly like this. The vendor reserves the right to, without notice, compensation, or consent from the purchaser, to make modifications and changes to the strata lot, common property, limited common property, and the development from time to time. The purchaser acknowledges and agrees with the vendor that if the area of the strata lot shown on the final strata plan varies by more than 8% from the area shown on the preliminary plan as part of the contract, as at the date of this contract, the purchase price shall be amended by multiplying the purchase price by the area of the strata lot shown on the final strata plan and dividing the product by the area of the strata lot shown on the preliminary plan. In the event that the actual area of the strata lot shown on the final strata plan varies by 8% or less from the area shown on the preliminary plan, there shall be no adjustment to the purchase price.
You have got to be kidding me, right?
Think of the math on this. An $800,000 condominium that is 800 square feet. Well, that works out to about $1,000 per square foot. A missing 64 square feet, which is 8% of an 800 square foot condo, works out to a missing $64,000 that you just paid that the developer is not obligated to pay you back. And the developer can do it and get away completely scot-free. If that didn't blow your mind, well, what about the actual finishing of the unit? We talked about deficiencies before, so let's talk about deficiencies again. A deficiency is when you walk in to go do your walkthrough on the property to see any imperfections in the unit, because you are buying a brand new property, so you deserve, or the property should look like it's brand new. But you're going to find in your contract that there is nothing called a holdback in your contract, meaning there is no money put on the line that won't go to the developer in the end if they don't finish the unit properly. This means you have zero skin in the game. You have zero leverage to hold against the developer. They will get all of their money at completion regardless of how the unit looks the day you move in. You would never, ever, ever, ever do a resale contract on a used home with a provision like that in it, but people sign this absolutely all the time when they're buying new construction. Okay, but at least you're in the property now and you're thinking you have escaped every single problem that could have arisen or that I've covered in today's video, but you're not out of the woods just yet. There's another way that developers are gonna get you, and this is it. Your first annual meeting arrives if you bought into a condo or a townhome complex, and you and the other owners get stuck with an absolutely massive levy where you owe money to the Strata Corporation, and they are proposing a massive increase to the Strata fees. So why is this? This is because in the efforts to woo you as a buyer, the developer way under budgeted the finances of the Strata Corporation to operate properly when they sold the units. They wanted to attract you and all the other buyers out there with low Strata fees. Developers are absolutely notorious for doing this and advertise these to get you to sign on the dotted line. In fact, this is why the BC government has been slowly chipping away at REDMA to make sure that this sort of stuff stops happening. Just like they did in November of 2023, where they passed legislation where they said that developers now had to contribute 10% rather than 5% of the annual operating budget to the contingency reserve fund when the complex is deemed to be new. So they got you again. But nonetheless, your fees still go up because they way under budgeted just to get you to sign. So to me, this really begs a question, and a question that I would really love to know your opinion on in the comment box below. With all the risks to the public, all of the things that we've identified in this video that get snuck into contracts, should developers even be able to sell units pre-sale, units that aren't complete to the public, making tons of promises but having tons of ways to get out of fulfilling those promises? And better yet, do you think it is appropriate with all the legal power and all the sales team power that a developer can have that a member of the public should be able to go in and not be represented by a professional realtor, notary, or lawyer? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're down there, you're gonna wanna subscribe because we're gonna be releasing a future video on all the things that you need to do to successfully buy a new construction property in BC. BC. And I know if you're still here, still watching, you definitely don't want to miss that video. So between all the risks in this video identified with buying new construction, the fact that you have to pay GST when you buy new construction, and you've got ultra high deposits that are due, sometimes as high as 20% of the total price of the property, this begs the question, well, what's the next best option? And that next best option is to buy a newer home that is in the resale market where you have a lot more protections and a lot more guarantees. If you're someone that's considering buying their first home and you're completely new to the process, you're going to want to check out this video here where we cover everything that you need to know about buying your first home. And if you're still interested in buying new construction after seeing this, check out this video here where we cover the newest tax exemptions related to new construction in the province of British Columbia. Thanks for watching, and we'll definitely look forward to seeing you on the next video. Cheers.